one thing we're going to look at now is setting up a random animation to play using animation behaviors included in the animation tools pack. With that asset pack installed, you'll see when you're in your character's animator, you'll have behaviors available in the inspector here. We've got the set bool, set trigger, and set layer weight parameters. So these ones can be useful for turning on a animation layer's weight, say for our mouth, for example. If we click on one of our animations, we can click add behavior, set layer weight. We can say on entry, set layer weight to 1. So this will ensure that even if we were to set layer weight right down to 0, whenever we get to this animation, on the entry of this animation state, it's going to override current layer's weight to 1. So if we hit play, you'll see we've got our layer weight turned down. You can see our weight's gone up. And we can add a new state, say an empty state, and we'll make a transition to this as soon as our animation finishes. You can see it'll transition down to the new empty state. You can see we ended that talking and he's got a sort of bad keyframe on his face, but we can choose to add another set layer weight, and we'll set this one to on exit, set the layer weight to 0. So now when I hit play, you can see our layer weight is 0. When we play talking, it's setting it to 1. And then when it's exiting that animation state, it's turned the weight right down. So now we no longer have that animation layer affecting our character's face. So another thing we can do is, I just removed both of these, is set bool and set trigger. So these are both very similar. So set bool, again, you can choose whether it happens on entry, on exit. If you want a definition of what each of these does, just hover over when to trigger and it'll give you a little tooltip there. And for parameter to set, this is just a string reference. So if you click on your animation parameters, which I don't have any, but if I had, say, a bool trigger of like is dead, for example, and say this state was something like kill player, when we transition into this state, we could set is dead to true, and you'll see when I hit play now, after our talking animation, we're going to the kill player state and it ticked is dead. Now usually you drive these parameters with code, but where this is handy is, say you want to transition out from dead back to, say, idle, you can have that untick is dead on exit of this state. So again, that would just be another transition back to say we'll pretend this one is our idle, and we could put a state on here, behavior, sorry, of on exit. And we'll set is dead to not be true. This might happen really quick because there's no animation assigned to this state. But you can see there dead went true and then went back to false. Set trigger is very similar. You type in the name of the trigger, but triggers don't have a true or false state, so they don't have that tick box. So now let's look at creating a random animation. So if I just go back to my layers, on my base layer, you can see I've got an idle animation and a bunch of other idles or fidget animations. And what I like it to do is, after it plays the regular idle, which is character just sort of standing still, maybe either play this one here where he's firing his gun, maybe this one here where he's standing with his gun, or maybe this one here where he's doing a dance. So to randomly choose an animation clip, rather than do that through code, we can do that with the Animator tool here. So what I'm going to do is create a right-click and create a new substate machine. And this, you can think of a substate machine as just a folder to contain our animations. I'm going to call this idle fidgets. And you can drag your animation states into that. And then we want to create a transition from our idle to our idle fidgets. And you can see I can choose to go into the state itself or each specific animation, but I'll just go into the state machine itself for now. Now, if we double click idle fidgets, you can see we've got our animations that we dragged in. I'll zoom in. And what we want to do is create a transition from the entry to each one of these states. So just right click and create a transition. And then we want to create a transition out of these states back up to idle. So we can click on this base layer and we'll find our idle animation there. Okay, so now when we come into this state machine, it's going to branch off into one of these animations, and how we're going to choose which one is using a animation behavior that's not on a specific state, but it's on this state machine itself. So if we click the background of the state machine, we can still add a behavior, and we're going to choose type random. I'm going to say choose random state. Now all we have to assign in here is the amount of animations that we've got. So we've got 3 animation clips, and then we want to also make a parameter. I'll just delete these ones we made earlier. Our parameter is going to be of type int, and it's going to be called randomizer. And it has to be spelled with a capital R, and it has to be exactly spelled like that. So now when we come into this substate machine, it's going to randomly choose a number between 0 and 3, so 0, 1, or 2, in this parameter up here. So we just need to click each one of these transitions and add a condition of randomizer equals 0 for our first state, randomizer equals 1 for our second state, and randomizer equals 3 for our last state. And these transitions have exit time ticked, so that just means it'll wait until the animation reaches its end, at which point it'll transition back and it's going back to idle. You can get back to that base layer by clicking up here. So you can see we've got our idle animation, a transition with exit time. So once the idle completes, it'll go into our idle fidgets substate machine. And then these are the 3 transitions coming back from each of our animations. So what does that all look like? Well, if we hit play, we should see that our character will start off doing an idle. And now he's gone into the rifle animation. When that completes, he goes back to idle. He's gone back to the rifle animation again. That's just the nature of randomness. Let's see if he gets something different. Okay, so each 3 times he's gotten the same animation, so I think there might be something wrong. So let's just have a look. This one's equaling 1. This one's equaling 3. Here's the problem. I didn't quite spell randomizer correctly. I left out the N. So let's try that again. Here we go. So this time we must have rolled a 1, and it's therefore playing the Gangnam Style animation. So now that's all working. So this auto live link button up here, it should be enabled by default, but that is what is making the animator jump around and keep us with the current animation. If we disable that, you can navigate through your state machine, but it's usually best to leave that on. So if we want to add any future animations to this idle fidget, we can just simply drag them in. We can just create a new state and assign the animation up here, but we do need to create the transition in and out for each one, going back to idle. And remember to set our randomizer to equal, in this case, we've got 0, 1, 2. This is the third one. And then remember to click on the background. And now that we've got 4 clips, we just need to change this to 4. Otherwise, we would never roll a 3 to get this animation.